Thanks for tuning in to this broadcast of The Resilient Advisor. My name is Jay Coulter, and on this episode, we're going to break down the results of a new YCharts survey on advisor sentiment towards model portfolios in this time of the coronavirus. But first, this episode is sponsored by LeadPilot. LeadPilot is an innovative digital marketing tool that you can use to manage your email, your social media, and your prospecting system. It's a tool that I've been using with my clients for the past couple of months, and I found it to be an incredibly innovative way to enhance your digital marketing. If you'd like to learn more information about LeadPilot and their platform, visit jcoulter.com/LeadPilot. That is jcoulter.com/LeadPilot. Joining me for this episode is Caleb Eplett of YCharts. Caleb, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Excited to be here.
All right, I've had your partner Sean on the broadcast in the past. He does a great job of articulating the surveys and the platform. I'm excited to have you come on and break down this particular survey because it fits right in my wheelhouse.
Those are big shoes to live up to. Sean's great. So
Sean is great. So the reason this fits right in my wheelhouse is I believe advisors should take ownership of the investment process. If you're an investment advisor, you should be an investment advisor. And that's why I'm such a fan of the YCharts platform. So let's start first. Could you give listeners and viewers a little bit of background on yourself, and then let's dig into the survey?
Yeah, sure thing. So, my name's Caleb Eplett. I'm the VP of Product here at YCharts. I've been with YCharts for about 8 years. And anybody that's been using YCharts for a long time, that's pretty much our whole history. We were around a couple years before I started, but I've had the pleasure of growing with YCharts and talking to thousands of advisors along the way, and learning a lot about some of the best practices for managing investments and how you can incorporate that into your practice. So, anybody that doesn't already know what YCharts is, check us out on our website, YCharts.com. Do a trial, but our vision is to enable smarter investment decisions. That's what we're here for.
Excellent. All right, so let's jump into the survey. Now, viewers and listeners, if you would like to download a copy of this survey, please go to the URL you see scrolling across the bottom of your screen, which is bit.ly/advisor models. We will put this link in the comment section on all the social media platforms where we are broadcasting. Also, if you have a question while we're going through this, if you are watching us live on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, post your questions and I'll pose it to Caleb as we go through this. So let's start at a high level here, Caleb. What made the team decide that you needed to do this survey in the first place?
Yeah, great question, Jay. I don't think anybody listening to this broadcast would be surprised that we follow investment management trends pretty closely here at YCharts. And, equally unsurprising is the fact that there's been a significant shift away from kind of active portfolio management towards more passive management over the last, call it decade or however long you want to say. But we're curious, what exactly does that mean? And how does that kind of activity or sentiment change when the markets really get volatile? So we decided to hone our focus a little bit even more so specifically on model portfolios, right? Over the last few years, we've seen a big influx of these third-party managed models, and also model marketplaces where you can go and look at all of these different models and try to incorporate them into your practice. So we wanted to understand, how often advisors and how advisors are leveraging these third-party managed models, and how their sentiment towards these strategies has changed, or if it has changed ever since our really first big market event in over a decade, which is the sell-off that happened earlier this year from the coronavirus, and since markets reaching new highs, at a kind of a record pace right after that. So it's been a very eventful year in the markets, and we wanted to understand how a relatively new strategy is being leveraged and how advisors feel about it.
A record pace, to say the least. And I tell you, one of the reasons that I use YCharts in my business is because the platform is very innovative. You guys are evolving with the marketplace, and I'm sure that this survey will dovetail into that as well. But there were three main takeaways from the survey, and let's just walk through them sequentially. What was the biggest takeaway, or the number one takeaway you found from the survey?
Yeah, I don't know if they're in a particular order, but I think the number one takeaway that we had was, over the course of the last several months, advisors have been even more focused on their investment management. And whether they're using third-party managers or doing that model management in-house, that's been the same. But the big difference is how confident they feel with those strategies compared to how they did a year ago. So our survey showed that only about 40% of advisors are feeling as confident or more confident than they were in the third-party strategies as they were a year ago. So most of them are feeling less confident. You contrast that with advisors that are actually doing this management in-house and building their own models, and about 90% of them are feeling as confident or more confident than they did a year ago. So, the really big takeaway there is, whether the strategies have been performing better or worse than, what's been happening with people that are managing those models in-house, the perception is that that lack of control or the comfort with using that kind of hands-off strategy is not leaving advisors feeling really good.
Yeah, because I think there are a couple factors driving those results. I actually do not find them surprising, just based on my work with financial advisors, as I've seen this shift to taking ownership of your investment process. But really, that's only in my finite universe. This is a broad survey, and that seems to be an overwhelming trend. But why do you think that is? Why do you think advisors, as a result of coronavirus, feel the need to take ownership away from third-party managers potentially in their practice?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's a good question. We've seen over the course of, again, the last several years, even the last decade or more, a bull market, right? It's been a pretty easy conversation to have between advisors and clients when every time they sit down, that statement shows a number going in the right direction. So there hasn't been a lot of focus on what's exactly happening behind the scenes with the investment management. Now you couple that with the fact that the investment process is still the cornerstone of the relationship between the advisor and their client. It's the way that most advisors have their revenue model set up as a percentage of assets. And when it boils down to why clients stay with their advisors, why they leave, and when you ask them what their advisors are doing for them, it's managing their investments, right? So regardless of all of the focus on holistic planning and goals-based planning, and how that's kind of moved its way into the space, people still want to know what's happening with their portfolio. And when we look at a time period like we did over the last few months, where the individual investor or the client of the advisor is extremely informed on what's happening in the market, very aware of kind of low cost automated strategies that are out there, thanks to all of the marketing being done by some of the asset managers and platforms that offer these tools. I think advisors are really feeling pressure to be able to talk about that value they're adding in the investment management process. And it's hard to talk about that value if you're not actively involved in it, or at least very well informed on how you can talk about the strategies that you are using.
Yeah, but well said. Inside of my firm, we try and coach advisors to lead with investing and serve with planning. It's not that financial planning and holistic wealth management is not important, but as you said, investing is the center of the relationship. I also would argue that technology today makes it easier for financial advisors who want to run their own investments to execute on that in a very, very effective way. And we talk a little bit about that at the end. Let's go to the second key finding from the survey.
Yeah, so the second key finding, I think it's interesting because this is something that everybody, or not everybody, but most people that took the survey agreed upon, whether they are leveraging a third-party model resource or building models in-house. And that's the trade-off that you get, whether which side of that decision you make. And that trade-off is time that you have to spend with your clients versus time spent actually managing those investments, right? So advisors that are using these third-party models overwhelmingly said this saves us time, and that's time that we can spend being face-to-face with our clients. Advisors that are managing investments in-house overwhelmingly said this is probably using more of our time than we would if we used a third party. But we think that the value that we create by spending this time on our clients' investments and on their portfolios is, more value than we would get from having that extra face-to-face time. So it's that trade-off of, would you rather have time freed up that you can talk to your clients, but maybe not be able to go into the depth of talking about how you're managing their investments? Or would you rather use that time to actively manage those investments and have your hands on what's going on with their portfolio and add your value to them by explaining, how you're doing that, on their behalf?
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I would argue that astute financial advisors systematize everything that they do. And if you systematize your investment process, it doesn't take as much time as you would think if it's been a while since you ran an investment portfolio. So that's a great takeaway from the survey.
I think that's a good point, Jay. And sorry to interject too, but I just wanted to tell a little bit of story. I was talking to one of our clients a couple of weeks ago who, in the last, I think it was about a year ago, it kind of shifted a lot of their assets over to third-party managed models. And the reason they did that was for this time savings, right? But this particular advisor, they were very focused on the investment management prior to that. And that's kind of how they got into the industry. That's what they enjoyed. Found out that even after switching over to these managed models, they were spending just as much time, if not more, constantly trying to understand what was happening within that model, being ready to explain it, dissecting if it had moved the way they would have expected it to. So they really weren't seeing any time savings at all because they were still just as active looking at those third-party models that they were leveraging than they were, when they were doing it on their own, but they had less control over that process. So it left them feeling really uncomfortable.
Yeah, not to mention if you're in a competitive situation and you're presenting a model that somebody else created and the person you're competing against is presenting the same model. It really makes it hard to differentiate yourself as an advisor.
That's right. You better hope your fees are lower, right?
That's right. All right. So the third takeaway from the survey.
Yeah. So the third takeaway was how difficult it can be to even go and evaluate these third-party models on kind of an apples to apples type comparison level. I want to throw a number out there around 10,000, which is how many professionally managed models there are to choose from for advisors out there. It's a lot. It's almost as many as there are ETFs and mutual funds. And there are a lot of tools out there that are really focused around purely evaluating those different strategies kind of side by side. And that doesn't really exist on the model side. So most advisors said that it was very difficult to do these apples to apples comparison. And about 40% said that the materials out there on any of these models are a little bit too biased or one-sided because it's usually a PDF or a report or some tools that you're getting from the asset managers that's actually managing the model. So if you want to compare two models across different asset managers, you're looking at literature from each asset manager kind of talking about all the benefits of the model, and it's tough to do a non-biased apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, that reminds me of 20 years ago when I was a portfolio specialist and wholesaler for an SMA provider, and I would show up in an advisor's office and present, my solution on my fact sheet, and it would show the statistics that my team put together. And then if they wanted to compare it to a competitive product, they had to do the work. And then as technology evolved, they could do a little bit of that. But the real edge was me being able to sit down and explain to the advisor why this made the most sense. Fast forward today, if you're an investment professional and you're presenting to your client, you're the one making the comparison. So you as the advisor have to have that high level of comfort in that apples to apples comparison. And you've got to do the work, right?
Absolutely. Not to mention even just the fiduciary responsibility that you have to your clients, right? And I think people have gotten really comfortable with that from a individual product type perspective, right? Being able to compare ETFs side by side or ETFs to a mutual fund or mutual fund side by side, or looking at whether a stock fits into a portfolio and is appropriate for that client's risk tolerance. But enter these models that are really tough to do that with. And I think it adds another level of discomfort there as well.
Yeah. All right. So let's take a step back from the survey, high level. Dust settles. What do you think the state of model portfolios will be as it relates to financial advisors?
So, yeah, I think let's go back to the survey results and talk about what the survey said before we talk about what I think. But the survey kind of showed that overwhelmingly people aren't going to change, right? So about 60% of the survey respondents said whatever level of model portfolios, managed by third parties we're using right now, we plan to continue to use that amount going forward. So that leaves the 40% that said they were going to maybe change, right? And of that 40% that said they were changed, about 20% said they would use it the same or more, and about 20% said they would use it, less. So really interesting to see that inertia is powerful, right? So even though that discomfort was caused for a lot of advisors, they're willing to stick with it. I do think that speaks a little bit to the kind of resilience and long-term view that advisors generally have, and they're always trying to preach to their clients, right? Is if you have an investment strategy, let's stick with it for the long haul. So it is good to see that behavior that advisors are often coaching on being recognized or shown in their own practice. But it will be interesting to see if we do continue to see market volatility if that discomfort creeps up enough to say, hey, we're actually going to change this. We're going to bring some of this management back in-house. And, we're looking to have, more control over how we're shifting tilts or, moving clients' assets around a little bit, to best position them for our conversations.
I mean, Caleb, you nailed it. Inertia is powerful, and it's powerful at the top of a bull market. It's powerful after a massive rally like we've just experienced. But these model marketplaces, they are compelling, and I offer models. Like you said, there are 10,000 different models out there. They have clear benefits. Why do you think the percentage of folks that aren't using them are not gravitating towards them?
Yeah, I think it's threefold. I think the first goes back to that last point that we kind of took away as one of the major takeaways from the survey, and that is the difficulty to compare the models, apples to apples, and do the type of analysis that advisors are used to doing. Right? It's still a very analytical job, and you need to be able to make confident decisions. And if you can't do that apples to apples comparison, I think that's tough. The second is I think they're a little bit untested. Right? So we've mentioned a few times the long running bull market, that kind of ran into its first hurdle, several months ago after more than a decade. But one of the things that I talk to advisors most often about, and when they're using YCharts and they want to look at strategies, is they say, I want to see how this performed in the last bear market, or, in the recession, kind of at the end of the 90s when the tech bubble burst. You can't really do that with some of these strategies. So it's a little hard to go back and see how they performed, in past bear markets, or how different market events actually affected them. So, as they build up more of a track record, maybe that will change. And then the last thing is just, that time savings element, I think, is yet to be really, realized by advisors who are seeing the value that they offer their clients in the investment management, right? So if you got into the business and you built your business to be a financial advisor around being an investment manager and talking to your clients about the investments, all of a sudden you have time freed up by not doing that. But you've also kind of given up a big part of your value add and what you're good at. Maybe if you are a gifted marketer and you've built your practice on that relationship based on something other than the investment management, then maybe this is a great route. But if you got into the business to manage portfolios and talk to your clients about investments, and now all of a sudden you have more time to talk to them but less to talk to them about, I think that trade-off is kind of tough to see the value from.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so before I'm going to pull up my YCharts tool to show viewers how I use this to look at model portfolios at a high level so they can see the applications of the results of this survey. Before I jump onto there, I want to give a shout out to Sarah Babazda for listening to us today. She thinks this broadcast is insightful. Caleb, that is 100% you.
Hey, that's great.
All right. If you have any questions and you're watching on social media, please post them. They flow through here into the broadcast studio. So I'm going to pull up one of the portfolios that we run. And you should be able to see it on your screen now. And don't worry about what the portfolio is. It's really more about seeing the applications of running your own models and how easy that can be, leveraging some of the third-party technology out there. I happen to use YCharts. So here you can see this model that's been incubated since the beginning of the year, and you can very easily look up performance numbers on the fly. It accounts for any changes that we make at quarterly rebalances. We break down just like a digital fact sheet, performance, allocations. And I'm going to go through this a little bit fast, but the holdings, and then it can be charted. But some of the applications where it really helps with clients are twofold. So using this tool, there's a quick flow component where if I have a client who says, okay, Jay, the sector rotation portfolio seems to make sense, but what happens if we go through another coronavirus episode? I can do a quick on-the-fly stress test and show how this particular set of holdings would have performed during the coronavirus drawdown. Conversely, you can do things such as an oil collapse, an interest rate spike, a recovery in a bull market, which is obviously much easier to show in this type of environment. Show its return versus treasuries, etc. Now, while that's impressive as you're sitting down doing a client presentation, this tool makes it very easy to add your own branding. You can see the Resilient logo down there in the bottom left. And then it gives you the ability to go in, and I'm going to go back to the model. think because I'm broadcasting, it's not letting me do it with the one click. It's very easy to go back to your model and pull up a portfolio, pull up the growth model, and create a report on the fly by simply going reports, a comprehensive overview report for Mrs. Client, generate the report, and there it is. It's not going to show up on the screen, but it's a beautiful 16-page PDF report that breaks down the actual portfolio. Caleb, as we look at managing your own models and given this awful demo, I don't think YCharts would ever do a demo.
Hey, you did great, Jay. I was biting my tongue a couple times there, but you did great. And a couple of things that I'll just talk about as you went through that, right? Because we've talked about this ability to compare models and analyze them, and then also the huge importance factor, which is being able to explain these concepts to your clients in ways that are really easy to digest. And I know you couldn't show the report, but the report kind of breaks this down in a way that's really easy to digest. But as you go through the different applications in YCharts, these models, we've basically turned them into securities in your account, so you can compare them to other models, to indices, to mutual funds, to ETFs, and do any type of analysis on it that you would already have been comfortable doing that same type of analysis on more traditional securities that you've been looking at for your whole career. So I think you did a really good job of highlighting that and showing some of those features. And I'd encourage anybody that wants to take a deeper look to come check us out.
Yeah, without a doubt. So because I'm figuring this technology out on the fly, I'm going to take a second here and I'm going to show that report because it's important. To me, it's one of the most compelling reasons to use YCharts. So I'm going to pull up that PDF so you can see how crisp it is. And viewers were able to see how easy it was to build. So here's the comprehensive overview report prepared for your client on a date with your branding information. And then it breaks it down. And keep in mind, you are able to put your own, each individual model into this type of report and customize the branding for it. And everybody was able to see how easy that was to do. So if you want to sign up for a trial of YCharts, I suggest heading over to YCharts.com. If you're interested in the report that we just spoke about, please visit. That's why I need somebody to help me broadcast here. Please visit the YCharts URL we created for this, which is bit.ly/advisor models, bit.ly/advisor models. For those of you watching this broadcast on replay on a social media channel, I will have a link to this in the comment section. I want to thank Chris Versace for tuning in today as well. He's a longtime broadcast partner, and we house some of his thematic models here on this model platform. Caleb, is there anything else that advisors should take away from the advisor survey before we wrap up?
I think my parting thought would be, if you're an advisor that really generates value and talks to your clients about how you invest their assets, don't be so quick to get away from that value add, no matter what else is promised. But if you're somebody who, says, hey, that's not my forte, there's some great tools in YCharts that help you to still have those deep insights and conversations with your clients about their portfolio, even if it is a third party managing it. So come check us out, and we'll help you and your clients, have a more fruitful relationship either way.
Excellent. Caleb, thanks so much for coming on and sharing the results of the survey.
Appreciate it, Jay. Anytime.